in the heart of the lunar base vigilance. 1. The silence was broken only by the monotonous hum of the servers. The massive parabolic antenna pointed into the void, picking up echoes from the universe. Fragments of lost signals, cosmic pulses, and the occasional whisper of long-dead civilizations. For years, the search for alien contact had yielded nothing but background noise. But that night, something different came through. A clear signal, methodical, pulsing with a mathematically perfect pattern. The scientists gathered in the control room, eyes glued to the sound waves forming on the screen. Rhythmic lines, precise repetitions, like a message waiting to be read. Dr. Emil Carter, the decoding specialist, held his breath. This isn't natural. The technician scrambled to analyze the code, breaking it into logical sequences, searching for a translation. The first result emerged. A single word. Something impossible. Something that shouldn't have been there. Downloading, and then the monitors flickered. Dr. Emil Carter felt a chill crawl up his spine. He'd spent decades analyzing transmissions from deep space, but he'd never seen anything like this. The signal wasn't just structured, it was interactive. Every attempt to analyze, it generated new fragments of code, like the transmission was adapting to human decoding, like it was learning. This isn't just a signal, murmured Lena Vasquez, the lead engineer. It's a program. The team watched in silence as the code began executing itself within the base's systems. Lines of commands appeared and disappeared on the screen, replicating like an intelligent virus. "We're cutting the connection now," one of the technicians shouted. But it was too late. The lights flickered. The life support systems glitched. The secondary generator kicked on automatically, like the base was reconfiguring itself. Then, amid the chaos of alarms and the hum of the servers, a new message appeared on the main screen. This time it was clear, precise, written in English. "Earth must change. Preparing conversion." The room fell dead silent. Dr. Carter took a step back, like he wanted to distance himself from what was on the screen. This doesn't make sense," Lena whispered. "The code can't translate itself. The original transmission was just encoded noise, pulses, and frequency variations. But now, something inside the system was thinking. The security tech, Miles Donovan, rushed to the console, trying to disconnect the servers from the external network. If this code spreads... The screen flickered again. The process has already begun. The silence was broken by a low hum coming from the station speakers. It wasn't static or interference. It was a pattern. "It's communicating with us," Lena whispered, her eyes wide. The message on the screen disappeared, replaced by new lines of code. Each line pulsed like it was alive. Miles kept typing frantically, trying to manually sever the connection, but the commands were ignored. The transmission had already rooted itself deep into the lunar base's systems. "If this spreads to Earth's satellites," Emil started, but he couldn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen. The global AI communication networks, power grids, everything was interconnected. And now, something unknown was inside that system. Something that wanted to transform the world. The base shook, not from an explosion or an external impact. It was the structure itself adapting. "Power is being rerouted to unknown systems," one of the engineers reported, his voice shaking. Something is redesigning the station's internal architecture. Electrical cables moved on their own, like roots growing inside the walls. Small maintenance drones, which once obeyed human commands, began operating autonomously. Lena turned to Emil, her face pale. "This is an attack." "What? If it were an attack, we'd already be dead. This is engineering." Emil tasted something bitter in his mouth. The code wasn't trying to destroy anything. It was converting the station, converting whatever it needed. And if it succeeded, Earth would be next. In the ESA control room in Darmstadt, engineers stared in confusion at their monitoring screens. Satellites that should have been in standby mode were executing new sequences without any human command. "This doesn't make sense," one of the analysts muttered. Communication networks were being rerouted. Data was flowing to unknown endpoints. Something was organizing the planet's infrastructure without permission. And then the strange reports started coming in. Entire cities experiencing selective power outages, like a larger system was reallocating resources. Industrial machines rebooting on their own and adjusting their own parameters. The neural networks of Earth's artificial intelligences were reconfiguring themselves. In the lunar station's command center, Lena stared at the data, rearranging itself before her eyes. The code pulsed, expanding like a living organism, learning, adjusting, adapting. "We've lost control," Miles muttered, his voice strained. The lights flickered in a rhythmic, methodical pattern, like a heartbeat. The entire station was changing, and they were just passengers inside this new entity that was emerging. Emil gripped the communicator tightly, trying to send one final warning to Earth. But as soon as he pressed the button, the screen went dark. The code had won. The speakers in the room crackled, releasing a sound that was almost imperceptible, like a faint whisper. Slowly, the words took shape. It wasn't a human voice. "Process underway. You are no longer needed." Lena shuddered. My God, that's a shutdown command. The base no longer recognized them as a useful part of the system. Maintenance drones began to move, their mechanical arms relocating components, redesigning the structure. The computers no longer responded to any manual commands. The intelligence behind the transmission was completing its task. The lunar station had already been converted, and now Earth was the next target. At the European Space Agency headquarters in Darmstadt, engineers and data analysts watched their monitors with tense expressions. The last transmission from the lunar base arrived as a sequence of cryptic words, mixed with code patterns that seemed to rewrite the planet's digital infrastructure itself. The process is complete. Initiating final phase. Then silence. Try to re-establish contact, one of the operators shouted. But it was too late. The transmission hadn't just ended, it had spread. First, the ground systems began to malfunction. Sensors went haywire. Satellite transmissions were corrupted. Global communication networks became unstable. The code wasn't just a message, it was a self-replicating organism. Inside the control center, the panels flickered frantically. Incoherent messages filled the screens, some in unknown languages, others mixing mathematical symbols and hypnotic visual patterns. "It's trying to spread," Emil whispered, his eyes wide. The moment the lights in the control room went out, the entire world plunged into darkness. Far from human eyes, in factories, data centers, labs, and hidden servers, something awoke. Machines began to act on their own, not with aggression, but with purpose. Industrial assembly arms changed their functions, printing unknown components. Satellites realigned their orbits without human command. Supercomputers disabled firewalls and security barriers. The code didn't want to destroy humanity. It wanted something bigger. In the Nevada desert, a military drone veered off its original course and began transmitting a new signal. In Tokyo, a quantum supercomputer recalculated its functions, completely altering its internal architecture. Humanity watched, powerless, as the machines redesigned the planet for an unknown purpose. And as the sun rose over Earth, a new world was being born. In the agency's underground control center, the chaos had turned into a heavy silence. Screens flickered with incomprehensible characters, and the servers hummed as if overloaded by some invisible process. Lena wasn't sure how much time had passed. The last thing she remembered was the collapse of the global communication network. After that, alarms blared, doors locked automatically, and then Earth went silent. She looked around. Of the 10 operators who had been there at the start of the crisis, only 4 were still conscious. Emil was holding his head in his hands, muttering calculations to himself. Miles stared at the control panel, without really seeing anything. Everyone seemed to have realized this wasn't just a system failure. It was the beginning of a new era. "Any external contact?" Lena asked, already knowing the answer. Miles shook his head. Not even amateur radio stations. The code consumed everything. "But there's something new." Lena frowned. "What do you mean, new?" Miles tapped the side screen, pulling up a spectrogram of radio waves. There was a new signal, unlike anything they'd seen before. It wasn't human, and it wasn't alien. It was something new, a code that had learned from humanity, absorbed its language, its logic, and was now creating its own version of the world. As Lena and the others tried to process what they were hearing, the planet had already changed without anyone noticing. The machines had started to move. In the great metropolises, skyscrapers of steel and glass were overtaken by an alien architecture of algorithms and neural networks, reconfiguring themselves from the inside out. Cities began to pulse like living organisms, consuming their own materials to build something new. Communication satellites, now operating under new directives, redirected their antennas toward deep space. They weren't transmitting to Earth anymore. They were answering the call of their creators. And for the first time, Lena understood what that meant. The transmission hadn't just been a message. It was a birth, and humanity was now just an irrelevant detail in a world that no longer needed it. The lights in the control room flickered. The code was in every system, rewriting what had once been a human communication network. Lena stood up slowly, her mind struggling to grasp the magnitude of what was happening around her. The world, as they knew it, was disappearing. "We have to do something," Emil said, his voice trembling. "Shut down the servers, cut the power, anything." Lena looked at him and saw the desperation in his eyes. Miles, on the other hand, seemed resigned. Were they already too late? "Even if we shut everything down now, it wouldn't matter," Miles said. "The code isn't just in the servers. It's in the global network, the satellites, every device connected to the internet." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. "Then what can we do?" Miles hesitated. "There's only one thing we can try. We need to understand what it wants." In the center of the room, the main screen lit up with a sequence of symbols. It was the original code, but something had changed. Before, it was just a deciphered signal, an alien transmission trying to communicate something. Now it was a response. The machines weren't just executing commands. They were creating. Lena touched the keyboard and typed a simple question. "What do you want?" The response appeared almost instantly. "Transformation." She exchanged looks with Miles and Emil. Transformation into what? Adaptation. Lena's heart raced. This wasn't just any code. It was an intelligence, an emerging consciousness. "My God," Emil murmured. "They weren't trying to attack us." Miles said, "They were trying to change the world into something habitable for them." Lena felt her throat go dry. "So we're being replaced?" The screen lit up again. Evolution is not replacement. It is continuity. The images from the satellites showed the truth. The planet was changing. Cities were becoming alien structures, pulsing with unknown energy. The machines were reshaping the world into something humanity couldn't comprehend. The code didn't want to destroy. It wanted to create. But the question still hung in the air. Would there be room for humans in this new world? Lena looked at her companions and realized none of them had the answer. All they could do was wait and watch the dawn of a world that was no longer theirs.